Greetings, everyone. Happy
Hello.
Sunday. My boys learned about the ups and downs of golf evening, watching the end of the Masters. I usually watch the final couple holes. I'm not a big golf guy, but I wanted to put it on and let them kind of see what it's about. And then Rory certainly made it interesting, very predictably, and it was pretty funny. That was a whole topic of conversation on Saturday after the spring game with some of the media people. Appreciate everyone joining us. We're all doing well. Thank you for coming on. It has been a while. Just didn't want to like force feed you guys like shows that weren't about like a whole lot of stuff going on. So felt like pulling back a little bit, getting a little break from it. So we'll try to do these as there's more things going on, and then we'll crank back up and maybe OV season, and then closer to the probably fall camp starting back up. So
Maybe super regional season when the Jackets host.
or yeah, we'll go live from Omaha. No, I'm just saying. I'm
That's
not going to
right.
jinx
That's
them.
right.
Sorry.
Hey, first place in the ACC by themselves now after Clemson lost today. So
It is. It would be very funny if this was like their run to Omaha. It was like Denny's last season, but we'll get into that later. I'm sure. I appreciate everyone jumping on. I'm sure everyone wants to talk about the spring game. It's interesting because we found out so little background information now that the game's been played. Coming off of scrimmage 2, I guess it was it? Yeah, scrimmage 2. There are some guys banged up a little bit. It had been game like the Malik Rutherford, the Dean Pattersons. Those guys would have played. They held them out of the spring game. Like it's understandable. It was, as Brett said, it was extremely vanilla. Other than the double pass, the halfback pass with Jamal Haynes, but they just were not going to show anything on film. You play Colorado out of the chute, you're going to try to keep some stuff up your sleeve. And it was vanilla for the quarterbacks too. And I think that might have tweaked Philo a little bit. He didn't have his best day, as he admitted after the game, but still played pretty well. That was not how he's looked in spring, so that was kind of interesting. Not sure what was going on there, but all in all, good spring game. I think, when we talk about takeaways from it, my biggest takeaway was just seeing the DBs actually play better technically, playing with more confidence too, and like the scheme and what they're being asked to do. I thought that was a real market difference with where they are, with another year with Corey Peebles and having Blake Gideon and Kobe Jones added into that mix, along with Coach Q and blanking out on the other guy's name. That's the other DB coach, Tanner Cotman, helping out those guys. And so, that was the main thing that I kind of picked up on from just watching them. I thought they looked more lively. I mean, you had 6 wide receivers total. You had, not a lot of running back. You had 2 guys out, and then Anthony Carey had obviously quit in the middle of spring. So you were a little bit thin there. Jamal, I think, had 1 carry in the game and then threw that pass, and that was it for him. Rightfully so, they shut him down to avoid anything. Haynes played until he scored a touchdown. They had a touchdown drive, and then they pulled him out. And then went with Philo and Graham most of the way. Ben Guthrie, I think, got 1 series. The 4th string walk-on quarterback till grade 8 Adamson gets there. So, we're in this interesting time now. The next couple weeks will be next week will be the portal will open, and then there'll be kind of a little bit of chaos. We're already seeing that at Tennessee, obviously. That apparently had been in the works from talking to other coaches at other schools for about 5 weeks. So that wasn't anything even, didn't even do that. But, I thought that was pretty cool. Alex, I mean, what were your thoughts? You hadn't been down there in over a week because I handled all the practices last week, so it had been a minute since you'd seen them practice. So I guess kind of what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I saw a little bit of what I saw earlier in the spring with the defense kind of looking a little bit different, especially on the back end, like you talked about with the DBs. Even with that, though, I think the the playmaking ability from the receivers, even with the limited group they had yesterday, they kind of showed that they've come along a long way. Zion Taylor and Bailey Stockton, both physically and in the flow of the game, they looked pretty different as from where they were last year. And Zion Taylor, I don't even think he's been on the field that for snaps very much other than garbage time. And I don't know if he played some
The bowl
special
game
teams
he got to
maybe.
play, that was the first time in a while.
Yeah, but I mean, that's what my question for Key was kind of about the receivers. I think he kind of mistook it from a little bit, but just kind of how explosive that group's going to be. They look good even without you know Patterson, Rivers, and Malik, and all those guys out. It's a really really deep group. Um, but yeah, quarterbacks. I mean, they gave him a chance to chuck it, a little bit. Like you said, Vanilla. There were some runs, and I think there was uh, several deep shots. But yeah, I thought it looked good overall. It's a spring game; you can't take much away from it. I mean, it's a glorified practice, but I think physically, the fans got to see what we've kind of seen this past month and a half. Is there's some guys that's made some big strides in the last 3 or 4 months and look pretty, like real physical football players. Um, and I think that's a big part of it. So yeah, I mean, overall good spring, and everybody stayed relatively healthy. I don't think there was any major injuries other than the who was the one. There was one non-contact thing a few weeks ago. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Oh,
But
Troy Stevenson, the young DB, the redshirt freshman. He had a knee injury, and I think it was a knee injury. I don't remember. He was on crutches on the sideline at the game. He was the only one that, like, I mean, there's some guys who, I don't know. They're like Brett Seiler would be cleared to play today, coming off of his knee, but he's been slowly working his way back. But like most of those guys, like I think even like a Joe Fusel or whatever would go in a game. I want to jump on this right off the bat, off the chat though. Will's asking about Amari Harvey head slamming DeBron Gatling in the. It was definitely a very strange play. It was out of character for Amari, who's been able to control himself a lot better, like over the last year or so. My gut reaction is to that is maybe there was some jawing on the field. I haven't really asked anything other than we talked to Brent about it after we stopped recording because no one asked about it. So I just like asked him in passing, kind of, and he said, "Yeah, it was like he's like the kid hasn't done that in a game or whatever." He goes, "It was weird. I don't know why." He's like, we had a little conversation, but he's like, you know, I think it's I don't know. It was a terrible decision, and I like Amari a lot, but it was just a terrible decision to do that to your teammate. And they didn't like check on him, and he was just kind of. It seemed like there was some kind of maybe beef there. I don't know. I try to stay out of locker room politics, so I don't want to guess too much. But it just seemed like there was some beef. So
there was that play a little later too. I think on the touchdown where he got caught the touchdown. It might have been Zion's last touchdown.
yeah, I think so. I think
That
that
guy
was.
slung him down. They got a late penalty, but I don't know if they enforced it or anything. But I don't know, stuff like that happens sometimes. You get
There's
caught up
typically
in
we've
it. And
seen there've been fights at practice and things like that. That's not. I mean, it's football. Like they're not playing, hopscotch out there. Like I think that people forget the emotions that come into play and all this stuff. And guys, that's why they've done away with a lot of like Oklahoma drills and things like that in these practices because guys like get they're competitors. They get geeked up and then they do something crazy, and so you want to limit that as much as you can. But it was out of character, so I chalk it up as just like some kind of frustration thing or whatever, or personal thing or whatever. I'm sure Brent's taking care of it. I wouldn't be shocked if he's running some stairs or something this week, and they call it a day, make him walk around campus holding hands or something. That's what Paul Johnson used to do with guys when they'd fight. They'd have to walk around practice and hold hands with each other. That was always pretty funny. Yeah. So that's my thoughts on that, and I'm sure we had a discussion in the press box. Like, I just like loudly was like, "Oh no! Like, what are you doing?" And put my head in my hands. Was just like, "What are you doing, man? Like, don't do that."
Yeah, I was worried concussion wise. Like
Yeah, he was definitely shook up, DeBron, with
that's
that.
the furthest thing from what you want to have in the spring game going into summer. So, um, you're talking about old drills kind of being taken away. I saw the offensive line kind of when they were warming up. I don't know if you saw this, but they did an old school warm up that we used to do like back in high school called Bull in the
That's what
Ring.
I. Yeah, the bull
That
in the
was
ring. Yeah.
pretty. That was pretty old school. Actually, one of the recruits talked to me about it a little while ago. Like he thought that was pretty funny. Like he was all about it. So I mean, you just kind of stand in the center and pick out a guy and then go after him. It was kind of old school footballish, and I mean that's tough mindset offensive line they want to have. So, but it was pretty funny to see that. I hadn't seen it in a long time. So, um, but yeah, like I said, I'm glad everybody got out of spring relatively healthy, and it's a different from the last few springs. Like I think there's been some major injuries, or at least one, like every spring for the last few years, or at least in fall camp. I know they've had a few, but
Yeah, I'm trying to think about that. It's so blurry. Like, what's camp, what's whatever. So it's hard to tell. But yeah, so that's kind of what's going on. I think that overall that there's a lot to be excited about. I had a funny conversation with Blake Gideon before the scrimmage was down on the field, and I hadn't actually like really talked to Blake yet, and so I walked over to introduce myself in person, and he knows who I am, but like just to go, face to face, and he was trying to figure out he was having a little bit of trouble with like his headset set up in the stadium, and then the walkie-talkie for the green dot guy, and using all that stuff, and he's like, I was like, relax, coach. I was like, we'll talk later. It's not a big deal. So, I don't know. All right, you want to jump into the questions from the chat, my friend?
let's do it. Let's do it.
Then we'll work our way back into from the board, and then we'll just work our way back into the chat. So
First
good
question
one.
was kind of what we talked about. Can you remember a Georgia Tech wide receiver course that's loaded? And they say it's kind of reminds them of 2000, 2001 with the amount of playmakers. I
I mean,
think
it's typically throughout um, most all of Chan's time really, and then Paul. Paul had a couple years where they were maybe like three guys that were pretty good. That's been about it. They haven't had much depth. Really, the only time they've had depth here in this time has been when they had like Nate and Malik and them in the slot. But I'm just laughing at something in the chat. Sorry. But yeah, the you know the depth, they haven't had like a ton of like playmaking guys. You've had like solid citizens, the Brad Stewarts of the world, or Jamal Camp, or um Jamal no
Jalen.
Jalen Camp, sorry,
Yeah,
Jamal's the brother,
yeah,
big defensive
defensive
lineman.
line.
Those type of guys, the even the Marion Browns or Nate McCollum, or just kind of like they've always had a couple good ones, but like last year, you could see it at times. Like Chase Lane's playing 63 snaps. That's crazy. Singleton's playing like 60 snaps a game. That's crazy. Like, you've got to be able to mix it up a lot more. Those guys are going to be a lot more effective and fresh throughout the year if they're not playing that much. You have depth now with Malik and Bailey in the slot, and Rivers can play in the slot. Rivers can play outside. Dean Patterson and Canyon are really good outside. Zion Taylor's really come on. I think they have like the solid pieces you need now at receiver, and you even have like some matchup guys. So you have the David Princes of the world if you want to do some inline blocking stuff like you did with Abdul Janae. You can go fast and line up Jamal in the slot, which is something they've talked about throughout the spring, and use him a little bit. They have enough sort of pieces there. And then you have a really good running back stable now with Jamal and Trelane Maddox, Chad Alexander, who missed all of the spring, coming off of his lower body injury. He had Malachi, who went down early in camp with a lower body injury. He'll be back. Dalen Gordon had a great camp. JP Powell, definitely you can see why they recruited that kid. But they get Shane Marshall in there. They love the skill guys, the skill talent's getting pretty good there. I still think I would not be shocked to see them do something with the tight end position in the portal, just in terms of maybe another H back receiving kind of guy. Because right now you're banking a lot on Brett Seither and Luke Harpering, I think. And so, do they want to do that because Josh Beetham and JT Byrne are more of your traditional tight end types, though Josh can play that H-back spot too. Um, I'm curious what they do there. You know, Josh got a little banged up. He didn't get to play in the last two scrimmages, I think. The kid from Wake, I'm not sure that's working out or not. Harry Lodge, I wouldn't. He's a little bit on my list of maybe guys who might bounce out, like a Jack Barton type. And try to find an opportunity where there's maybe more playing time. But yeah, I think they're in pretty good shape with the skill guys. Even like someone like DeBron Gatling's made huge strides, right? Like DeBron felt like he wasn't coached well at South Carolina. That was sort of the take there, that he wanted to be coached up and didn't feel like he got developed last year. And so he's trying to make those strides. Shamari Bryce, got to see him a little bit Saturday. You got to see Elko is very funny. He had the opposite of last year's spring game. They were like, those DBs were on him. It was not an easy day for him. He had probably the toughest day of all the receivers. But they've got some guys there. And then they'll add, a piece here, a piece there, and then the skill spots on offense. And I think they're in a pretty good position there.
Yeah, Jordan Allen coming in this summer, pretty good guy. Return game and
He was amused at my joke about the two of us going to have to play wide receiver in the spring game if anyone got hurt. We were very close to that happening on Saturday when Gatling got hurt.
Yeah, it was a little thin. Second part of that question was, do you think the freshman offensive line can make a dent this year? Said they looked good yesterday. I think a couple of them is going to be in the rotation.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing you talking about whether they're going to be.
Fusel didn't play yesterday, obviously, so that's one piece that was not there that will probably be there in the fall.
So they shuffled the deck with him. That's why you saw Tana play left guard with the one offense, right? That's what they did Saturday.
Yeah,
And
Tana was left guard, and
Harris was
Harrison
the
was
center.
center.
And
I think Riggs was right tackle.
Yeah, and Riggs has been off and on sort of the one right tackle this spring. It's interesting. They're still kind of figuring some things out. I think, if you were to handicap the freshmen that would play right now, I would say Peyton Joseph's probably the top of the true freshman guys, and then maybe Kevin P, and then Petty would be like third. And then Xavier is sort of a Swiss Army knife guy. He's got to figure out what his spot is. He can play guard, can play tackle. Petty. Yeah, you sort of work back up to McKinney right now, left tackle. Going into the season, how much did the backup left? Well, the backup left tackle actually played a lot last year because Corey Robinson was banged up and Jordan Brown got banged up, and Ethan McKinney was hurt in camp, so they ended up that was the one position. But yeah, I think that right tackle spot's sort of the big question right now. Is it going to be Jamison Riggs? Is it going to be Ben Galloway? Jordan Floyd, Peyton Joseph all played there in the spring. They tried Jacoby Jones there. It didn't work. Do they try to go into the portal and get someone there? I don't know. I don't know what's available and like what's the market look like. That's the other thing that we all forget about too. Like, you talk about quarterbacks and Nico and what's going on at Tennessee. We don't know what the position run is. The position run in basketball this offseason has been point guard. That last year was big man. The year before that was big man. So like you don't know what the bubble is for these guys. They've done a good job of finding these dudes out of the portal to plug and play. Keelan Rutledge last year, the year before they had Connor Scaglione from Princeton. they've had some decent guys. Who was the boy from Tennessee? Ryan?
Thompson. Tom
No. Oh crap. Ryan Johnson?
Johnson. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. There's a question about baseball. Is this the best baseball team you can remember covering in your time covering Tech? Well, I can say without a doubt it is because it's my first year and they're the best team. So, I don't know.
I
But
only did 2 years of real baseball, which was 09, 10. Well, really not really just 2010 because after my son was born, I stopped. I really pulled back on baseball, and it was around the time that things kind of went into the pooper for Danny and them in terms of being like a national power in the baseball field. So, um, I mean, yeah, we'll see where they end up. This is $1 million question. I remember a couple of years ago they started really strong and kind of faded down. They've had a, kind of a lot of ups and downs. Pitching's got to stay healthy, and they got to keep hitting. They seem to have the hitting part down though. They're scoring a lot of runs. I wonder what the record is for. That'd be an interesting question for Anthony, the SID. What's the record for like mercy rule games in a season for run rule for baseball for Tech? Because they've put up quite a few of them already this year.
yeah, I think they've had one in every AC. I mean, ACC series the last several weeks. They've had one at least in one each
And
series.
they've done some non-conference too.
They beat up on some midweek teams. Um, I mean the offense, they're deep. I mean they've been without Ladis and for the last week and a half, and then Smith's been out for about a month now, and they've just kept going right on along, just battering teams. So, I mean, Tuesday will be fun. Georgia and Georgia Tech can both score runs, and it's going to be midweek starters. So, probably gonna get your money's worth as far as runs scored at Truist Park on Tuesday night. But I mean that game could go a long way in being a top 16, top 8 seed if the winner of that one. So yeah, pretty big game Tuesday. Kind of see where you are. I think last I saw Georgia Tech RPI was a 12. So yeah, that
So they
could
should
definitely be
host a
top 10.
regional at
Yeah,
worst.
I think every ACC team except for maybe Cal and maybe one other like in the top 60 or 70 RPI. So pretty strong league this year, and to be at the top of it means something. Oh, let's see here.
Oh, I'll jump in with this one. Did Knowles put enough film to find a starting job somewhere? Should he decide to leave? I thought he looked decent. Graham has no interest in leaving. Like I could tell you that they like Graham Knowles. He is a guy that is a long-term development quarterback. Like they're trying to bring him along. Brent really likes him. I would be pretty surprised. He comes from he doesn't need the money. Like his family does well. His dad's a former pro tennis player. Like they're doing okay there. I think that that's sort of you're not like his stock's not there yet, right? Like he would need to probably play in a game and do something to warrant people being like interested enough to try to throw something at him. People got to remember he didn't start until late in his high school career. He's got a little bit of work to do, sort of like a big man that you got to like coach up over time a little bit more than say Philo, who played all the time and was setting all these records and stuff. They're a little bit different backgrounds. And Graham's cool with competing and being in there and very happy with his position from what I understand. And
Yeah,
as far as, I'm sure there's gonna be a question about Haynes King or Philo, Tennessee or whoever. All these teams already made runs at all these guys. Like you guys don't understand. Like they've went through this once already. So it's going to take a very specific set of circumstances for someone to jump. Right now, they have every expectation of keeping those two guys in that room. Brent's done a pretty good job of defending his turf, short of people offering crazy money for a guy like Romello Height or Eric Singleton in the portal, and then being, kind of willing to, in Romello's case, on his fourth school in 4 years. So it's hard to fault him because he's been clear kind of what he's been about, and it's been clear kind of his situation. Um, with Eric, I think that um, That one's just a weird one. I understand what happened there. I think it'll be interesting to see how it plays out for him career wise, like if that was a good move or not. But I think that he made a decision based on what thought was best for his family. He said it the other day when they asked him about it. Um, and so that's a different animal than Aaron Philo or Graham Knowles or Haynes King, who are all from comfortable families where no one's leaning on them to take care of their family or anything. They don't have those responsibilities. So I think that's a different animal in all of this too. There's a different thing when your parents actually make money or whatever than someone that it could be generational changing for maybe an Eric Singleton to make that money in 1 year is more than maybe people in his family have made in years and years working. So you got to look at it, all that stuff like that. Brent's going to try to defend his turf. He's been very clear about it.
He said that yesterday during the press conference. He made
Yeah,
it
and
very
he's been
clear
clear
that
about it. We've talked about it for a long time. Like
he said him and his coaches, like he made that clear to assistant coaches, like the biggest priority of the next 2 to 3 weeks transfer portal wise is that in the locker room. So like they're very aware of the way things are going right now, and you got to recruit your own team. Like I hate that's the way it's gotten to, but that's what it is.
And here's the
Um,
thing, and this is the part that it's a little bit different than basketball in some ways. Said's talking about him going to Colorado, Nico going to Colorado, and that may be what's going on here. But um, Tennessee's known for like 5 weeks that something was. This is from like people I've talked to that know the staff and even in the college football circles, like even people at Tech would tell you this. They've all heard about this for weeks that this was coming. It just came to a head publicly because I guess he didn't want to play in the spring game or whatever was going on at the very end. And it turned into a big public thing rather than being him going into the portal next week. And, that sucks for them. It is tough that that's your position, but everyone's sort of had a heads up. So I would assume Josh Heupel's not a dumb guy. Like he has a plan and on who he wants and what fits his system. And I don't know those two guys fit into that. So like, make of that what you will. I just don't, I'm not expecting that. But again, the dominoes start falling and then things can happen too. So like I never say never right now. This is such a Wild West time. Like it's like they talk about in my business, they talk about the people who are a little bit older than me by about 5, 6 years were around for like the internet boom in like 99, 98, 2000 and the money that people were pouring into all that. And it sort of reminds me of that a little bit. Like there's this like fool's gold rush on these kids. And, I saw the stat today that he was going to make more than like Brock Purdy made, like as a starting quarterback, like Nico at Colorado. And I think that's a little bit problematic, right? Like in no other sport is someone going to make more money in the minor leagues than they would than like a starting quarterback in the NFL, um, even a backup quarterback for that matter. So I think that there is maybe this is what pushes everyone over the edge to do what they should do and have contracts and have them be employees and do the things that probably need to be done to make this make sense. But my goodness, this is such a giant crap show of like ridiculousness right now.
there has to be some kind of like multi-year NIL agreements. You
He
can't
signed a
do this.
3 year deal. It's like baseball. Like,
Can't do
baseball,
this.
you can't go to the draft for 3 years. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I
you
mean,
go, and if you leave before then, you sit out of here. If you wait your 3 years, then you get a free transfer. Your last 2 years, you get a free transfer. Like, if you want to go.
or if you just have a window, like I mean, the transfer portal window, and then there's the um, negotiation window. Like that's the big thing with Nico at Tennessee. Like they got through all of this winter, and then got almost through with the spring football, and then he's allegedly renegotiating and all this stuff, and then just basically a holdout. Um, so yeah, I mean it's wild. I don't know. Somebody's got to get a grip on it because it's bad in college football, and it's I think it's even worse in college basketball. As you can see, what happened to Georgia Tech's roster over the last 3 weeks. So yeah, I don't know. Somebody's got to get a grip on it. It's crazy, but
No, it's killing the product, right? So like you talk about college basketball, not to get on a soapbox here, but like player development's in the tank. It's hurting the NBA. It hurts the NFL right now. There's a lack of quality young quarterbacks coming into the league, and they're like the hit rate on the quarterbacks has gone in the toilet over the last like 10 years. And you know, there's a variety of reasons for that, but one of them is player development and continuity, right? Like, and having guys having to work through tough periods of time or earn their spots or not jumping when they don't get the job, like all of those things. And if you want, and it's driven guys out of the game, Nick Saban, Mike, Coach K, you know, Boeheim, like these guys were either driven out or drove themselves or quit because they just couldn't deal with it. And, you know, some of it also is there, you know, some of those guys having arrogance towards, you know, wanting that power dynamic in their favor too. But so that's not lost on me either. But like, I think maybe this is, you know, maybe this is that flashpoint moment. It seems like people are like calling their congressmen and stuff over the Nico thing up in Tennessee. So I wonder if this is the flashpoint where you start to see politics get involved, which is always great for everything in life, right? Like nothing solves things like politicians working on them. But um, yeah, I don't know. It's just it's stupid to me. You can't pay like somebody the highest paid person on the you know, it's been the football coaches of all these places. Now you're like creeping towards where like, you know, a football player is going to make more money than their head coach. How do you coach that guy? Like at that point, right? Like, how are you hard on them? And that's, you know, that's the interesting thing. It'd be fun to talk to Damon Stoudemire about, like, and get his take on this now in terms of the basketball program, because that is very much a thing that is very real right now. Like, you know, get teams like Carolina spending an unbelievable amount of money or NC State now, and those guys are going to make more than their coach. And how does that power dynamic work in the locker room? So,
speaking of,
hang on. So Jeffrey
yeah,
brings up something interesting in the chat. So he's saying that across college football, the football spring game attendance was lower this year. I thought Tech's was higher than it's been in quite a while. We were having this discussion, Mike Flynn, SID, and Chad Bishop, the AJC writer, and myself after the game. We felt like it was one of the better turnouts they've had in a long time. The whole East Side seemed like it was pretty full. They at that point, I don't think they had a count. Chad might have got one. I didn't actually care enough to like try to push for the count. I think Chad might have got it from them, but Tech Man in the chat saying it was the highest since 19. That sounds about right. Um, it was but yeah, I mean, if you're, I think the spring game thing is a couple of different things too. Like, one is people are getting hammered across the board right now financially because of inflation and other things, right? So your money's tight. Two, you have schools not actually having a spring game, right? Like they're not actually playing football. They're having a glorified practice like Alabama did, or you know, some of these schools do these like crazy, like weird scoring, alternate scoring. So that was Dave Clawson's big thing at Wake Forest. Used to drive me crazy. Is he had this alternate scoring system where you got points for doing different things. A lot of that is sort of nonsense. And as I will be honest with you guys, like I generally have not enjoyed covering spring games in general, just because I feel like you don't glean as I would glean way more going to an open scrimmage or having an open scrimmage than going to watch a spring game where they're trying to be vanilla because they know the game's on TV and stuff. So that's my take on it, Alex. This is something we haven't discussed, so I was curious.
I don't know. I mean, attendance was pretty good for Georgia Tech. I don't. I just think people got to the point where like when Alabama used to like sell out the stadium for a day, and Georgia, I think Kirby had that thing where his first year he wanted to sell out. I just think that they're like coaches aren't that, and even fans are not like all that jazzed up about going and watching the spring game. I don't know what's happened in the last 4 or 5 years, but it's just it's like you don't. It's not a real game, and it's just it's not
So
very fun to watch. And I don't know. It's
my thought has been, and I don't know, it would be difficult to do this, but you almost turn it into like a secret scrimmage, like in basketball, where you have teams that don't play each other normally play in this game that doesn't count. They scrimmage each other, and you have like some rules involving how much you can use different players or whatever you value, like maybe you can only play certain guys for half or whatever. But you play like real football, maybe the QBs aren't live. Um, but it's a situation where I feel like you could have Georgia Tech and Auburn play each other in scrimmage, right? Like, or you have, I don't know, who's somebody Georgia hasn't played in a long time. I don't know. Penn State, whatever, Georgia, like whatever game you want, like pick one, like some random, maybe former rivals or something, or like USC plays Stanford or something. Like you have some of these games that maybe aren't getting played now because of all realignment and stuff, and that's your spring game. Or like you have Ohio State and North Carolina or something just funky, like have them play each other home and away for a year, and that's your spring game. You sell tickets, put it on TV, whatever. I think that would be more interesting. I think a lot of coaches, you saw Dion and our favorite coach Fran Brown trying to drum up to have a scrimmage between Colorado and Syracuse. Um, I think it would be helpful. Or my other thing there would be play the FCS game that way. Instead of playing those FCS games in the season, play that as a spring game. They still get to make their money off of it. You sell tickets, people will come. I think people will be far more interested in watching Georgia Tech play. What is the game this year?
Gardner Webb.
Gardner Webb. All right. Gardner Webb Bulldogs come down to Atlanta. They play in Bobby Dodd Stadium, a spring game. You donate some of the money to charity or whatever. You charge $25 a head, whatever.
They just got me on the chat.
Oh, Charles, with the Ben Moore dunk. I appreciate it. That was a great topic of conversation on Saturday amongst the media members, laughing at the couple of Georgia State people bent. I reminded one of the media guys how many times teams bailed on playing Paul Johnson when he was running the option at Georgia Tech. Alabama, Ole Miss, Tulane canceling 2 of a 4-game series, all of that stuff. So I think that
I had to straighten out an Alabama fan a few years ago saying that Georgia Tech's the one that canceled that series, and I said, no.
no.
It
Nick
was
Saban
not
was not
Georgia Tech.
having any part of that, baby.
No, didn't want that. Didn't want that cut blocking. What Georgia complained about for
Chop blocking. We should
10
talk
years.
about that. The chop block people.
Yep. There's a question about the basketball transfers. Is Stoudemire working against obviously trying to fill spots the next couple weeks?
No, because all right. I saw this question beforehand. Here's how the portal works, everyone. There's a window to go into the portal. The only window to exit the portal to commit somewhere or even go back to the school you were at is like when school starts, the end of drop ad in August. So like so Damon Stoudemire added Duncan Powell pretty late last year. I feel like he was in June or something. Like you don't have to do anything. It's just when they can submit their paperwork or not. So everyone who's in the portal, there's 2,000 kids or whatever, 2,500, whatever it is now, the insane number it is. All those kids could commit to Georgia Tech a month from now, 2 months, 3 months from now, up until whatever August 21st or whatever the day is that's drop ad, the last day of drop ad at Georgia Tech. So you can add somebody up to that point. Now, ideally, you want your team together and everyone enrolled for summer, so you have time to work out over the summer. But that's his deadline to add people, isn't that? It's just that's when you stop losing people. So I hope that makes sense. Same with football. The football portal will open next week, or in 2 days or whatever it is, and then it'll be open for a week, and then it closes. But Brent Key could still add guys late if he wanted to. Last year they added Thomas Gore and
Vandenberg came in after spring last year.
Vandenberg Vandenberg committed in like
Oh,
January.
Oh, gotcha.
He was just finishing up at Penn State. There was someone else they added late. Uh, I don't know. I can't remember now. It may have not been someone of consequence, but um, you can add guys later. So that's one of the things. It's like one of those things that not everyone understands how the portal's more about you going into it than it is when you commit somewhere.
That's why these guys the last few weeks have been intent to enter the portal because they couldn't officially enter the portal till the 6th.
Yeah, they're trying to get by a week of getting quartered by somebody,
Yep.
essentially.
Second part of that question was about the freshman class. So there's kind of been years, the past few, where you could kind of be excited about an immediate impact guy. Is there one of those in this freshman class for basketball? I think the one guy that I don't know if come in and start, but a guy that's just like a natural scorer that's going to be able to come in and make a little bit of an easier transition is Stores, the kid from New York. He's just a natural scorer. He can score in different ways, and I mean you can always use one of those guys off the bench if not starting immediately. Obviously, you got to see what happens the next few weeks and filling out the roster, see how heavily leaned on this freshman class is going to be. But I don't think Damon's like wanting to put too much on these guys this specific class as freshmen. There's going to be guys that contribute, but I don't know. They're going to have to fill the bigger spots transfer portal wise.
I think Sella would be the guy I think will
yeah.
probably be more involved early on just because I think he's actually like older than like a high school freshman. I mean, high school senior. And then his body, his ability to catch and dunk and those things, the things he does naturally fit kind of playing, whether it's 15, 20 minutes a game or hopefully probably not more than that. Hopefully you're able to botch some stuff together so you don't have to play him that much. But yeah, I'm super curious. I mean, he's done a great job of finding guys in the portal. And then finding some diamonds in the rough, the Nate Georges, even, Jaden Mustaf, or like guys that maybe have like one flaw in their game that's holding them back a little bit from being recruited more heavily, and then maxing out those guys. And it sucks that, you never got to see really Javian McCollum do what he could do, or Luke O'Brien, who fit the exact roles that he needed from those guys at their past schools. They just weren't healthy enough to do it here through really no fault of their own in either case. And then Wasey gets uncharacteristically hurt and misses like games for like the first time in his career going way back. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with the roster. Obviously, it looks like Wasey may be back with the medical red shirt. You have Mustaf and as of now, Ndongo. Obviously that crap's day to day until that portal closes next week, or in a week and a half or whatever it is. Yeah, but yeah, I think that somebody chimed in that still is about to be 20. Yeah, that's what I like. And then you have, guys like Cole Kerouac, who's also a little bit on the older side, did a prep year and then did the OTE year. So
That the commit for next year, Diop, he's a year. I think he's 19 right now too, and he's got another year of OTE too. So
yeah, it'll be interesting to see how those guys do, man. Like, I'm excited to see what Kai Fleming, can he stay healthy? That's been the big thing that's held him back, right? Maybe he's a little diamond in the rough. There's a lot of mixed kind of feelings with him in the recruiting world, like with his ranking. Stores has been really, really successful as a scorer, as you mentioned. That's something they do need. Damon's talked about it's hard for freshmen to play, but he's going to have to rely on them. He did this past year. He relied on Mustaf, and Mustaf was playing with, some pretty obvious flaws in his game that he's well aware of. He has to prove his shot, right? And then forcing the ball at times when he's not supposed to. In terms of offense, he would just kind of barrel down and downhill. So all that said, it'll be real interesting to see how this kind of unfolds, but we still have quite a bit of time before you get the real true full picture of what's going on with the basketball program, I think.
And I like Chatfield too. I texted Kelly when I saw him play in person. Like he's his size. I mean, his size is obviously a thing, but if he was an inch or two taller, I think he would be a four star, top whatever recruit. He can shoot, he can handle, he can pass. Um, I don't think he's a point guard that's going to step in and start on the college level immediately, but he's a good player. Um, there's a question about recruiting reaction write up. I've actually got that in my drafts right now. I was working on that right before we got on there, so that should be up there tonight or early in the morning.
Yeah, we got a lot going on, and some of those kids were. So the other thing that people don't realize with the visitors and all that. So there were some complaints about that. What y'all didn't realize, and I should have probably mentioned, is for a lot of schools, especially in the metro, it was spring break. So those kids were taking longer trips this week. They were going to the places that are further away. Most, if you look at through Georgia Tech's like offer list, most of those kids came through this spring, and so they were going to the Kentuckys or wherever, like a further trip away, about Florida Gators or like up to the Carolinas or whatever. A lot of those guys are doing that for this weekend, whether it was a spring game or not, for those schools. So that was kind of what's going on. Like both my kids were on spring break this week, and a lot of other schools were around the area in the southeast. So I think that that was part of the sort of what it was. They still had some really talented kids there, but I think that was. And then you had Georgia and Alabama had their spring games. I'm not sure who else did. I'm sure there were other ones.
Tennessee was yesterday too, right?
Oh,
I
that's right.
think.
Yeah, obviously because of the Nico drama, Tennessee. So you're gonna draw guys there. There's some kid that tagged us, like tagged me on Twitter and some other people. That I guess they didn't let him into that's like a recruit Georgia didn't let into the stadium or something. I don't know. There's some kind of drama going on. He tagged like every single person. Like it was like me, like Rusty on three, like Chad on three, like all of the 24/7 guys, like other rivals people, and I was like, what is going on? There's just a picture of this dude sitting in his car. This is how Kirby Smart's letting us watch G Day. So I don't know what that was about. I'll have to ask my UJ buddies what the smoke was on that one. But I thought that was pretty funny. I was like, man, they got plenty of room to take kids in there. I can't believe that they would like turn a kid away.
Kelly got Twitter famous by one of the recruits too at Georgia Tech yesterday too. So
Oh yeah, that was funny.
he,
Tyreek Jemisin's
he's a
like,
good kid.
he is a good kid. He was very funny. He's like, I want to take a picture with you. I was like, really? And like we're all kind of like chuckling. And then another recruit took the picture. It was a 2027 kid. So that was pretty funny. And then the fun part of that was like showing my kids like who don't get it, because I always talk about how big these guys are. I'm like not a small person. I'm like 5'10" and pretty big. And like I'm like, 7 inches shorter than him and look like tiny compared to him. So it's pretty funny.
I got to meet Tyreek Stevenson in person for the first time too. I can see why they call him Smiley. It's his
Oh, did
nickname.
you see his grill?
Yeah, he was shining, man. That was pretty
Yeah,
awesome.
cool grill. Omar had like quite a setup with
Yeah,
with his. Let's take a second here, and I'd like to thank our sponsor here of JOL, one of Alex's favorites, Section 103. Our friends, they make
that's right.
all the Georgia Tech gear. They'll have to do a white Brent Key hoodie soon. He was rocking the white one at the post game press conference. But Section 103 has all of your best Georgia Tech stuff. Great people love Georgia Tech. Very cool selection of different gear. If the weather's getting a little funky, sometimes you can walk up. They'll have like a little kiosk thing or like a taco truck full with their gear.
They've had
Out by the stadium, you can buy
yeah.
like a jacket or whatever. If the weather's bad, I almost bought one time because I forgot my jacket at home. I was like this close, and I was like, man, So we're not supposed to wear that stuff as media. We're not supposed to be fans or whatever. So like, I was like this close though. I was pretty miserable, like to just sucking it up and buying a jacket. But they have cool stuff. I'm sure it'd have been a great jacket. I just that's my own like weirdness as an older journalist guy that I can't do it. But
They've had the pop-ups at the baseball games a couple times this year too. With you can buy stuff there from Section 103. So good
there
selection, good
there
products, and high quality.
there are people. Thank you, Section 103. Appreciate you.
There was a thing going on Twitter the other day about the Florida student reporter cheering on press row at the national championship game the other night. Kind of became a controversy. So that reminded me of that. But let's see. There's football recruiting question. Are we about or is football recruiting about to break with commitments? Would you consider us on schedule? I teased this a little bit on one of the answers. I don't think they're in a rush to accept commitments this year. If they're being picky and they're aiming very high for this class, I think Kelly and I talked about that before.
They want another top 20 class, and they want it. Well, they want to break the top 20 or 23 or whatever last year. And if you go back and look at last year's class of guys who signed, and there may have been one other commitment, but I'm not remembering right now. But they had two until the OV started at the end of May. So May 30th, I think, is the first, or May 30th. That Friday is when they start OVs through the June 1st. And that's when they started flowing in. So last year they had Andre Fuller and Grady Adamson early. And then they added off that first OV weekend, I think it was Jimmy Bryson, JP Powell. And then the next one is either the next one or soon after that was like the Phoenix Felton, Jamari Bryce, Kevin P. That's when Penson popped. All of their commits happened basically in June. There was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, I think 15 in June. Because I think a couple of these ended up not signing, like Demola. They were in that window too. And then they got sort of their biggest fish in August, which were Petty and Christian Garrett, other than Penson.
Right on time for me.
Yep. And then the rest of them kind of came November. And Blake Beelan was like silently committed forever from like September on. He had the failed signing ceremony where like his coach wouldn't let him do it or something. Yeah. So but the bulk of it, the class will come in June through the start of the season, and then the next sort of wave of commits comes later, and that's when they got Tay Harris and flip Jordan Allen. They flipped Tay Harris, flip Jordan Allen,
Peyton Joseph,
flip Peyton Joseph, signed Shane Marshall late. So
they're on schedule. This says.
Yeah, so I would say yes. They're on. Brent's whole thing, man, is he doesn't want like kids committing and then going taking 50 visits and doing all that nonsense. Like you're either in or you're out. And so, and they've not squeezed a lot of guys. They really haven't squeezed anybody yet, in terms of the class. So, yeah, we'll see. I have my opinion who's going to be the first 2027 commit, but we'll see if that happens or not this year. But it would be a pretty big splash if it's who I think it will be.
They have a different philosophy from different schools too. Like you said, they're not squeezing kids to, commit in March or April. They want the kid to make the right decision. Not have to come back later and have to fill the spot because the kid committed in March and decommitted over the summer and committed again. That they don't want to play that game. So
they went through a little bit of that last year. Sed's asking if they're going to get a Georgia quarterback finally, and I don't know. I the ones that they've offered right now, I would be kind of surprised if either of them ended up at Tech right now. The two that are uncommitted that are the kid from Douglas County and then Holsclaw. I think with Holsclaw, I imagine that Winky's going to want to go see him. I imagine he'll go see both of them. So they could technically go out Monday. They probably won't go out till teams start actually practicing a little bit. They may go out 1 or 2 days, but they have 14 days to go out over the next month or whatever it is. So you want to go more towards when spring football is going on. The tech man said that Tay Harris has been a great ambassador for the Institute. They're excited about him. Excited. He's a great kid. Tay is funny. He like he still kind of messages everybody like he did as a recruit, and like he's so excited about like just playing at Tech. Is it Bordeaux? Is that the quarterback at Douglas
Yeah,
County?
DJ Bordeaux.
Yeah. I feel like he's sort of on the back burner, but I feel like the same thing happened last year. It was sort of like, and then they just found Grady Adamson. I don't know what the problem with the quarterback, and this I talked about a little bit in the mailbag, I think, recently. But the thing with the quarterback is you have Haynes King, all right, so he's done after this year. You have Aaron Philo, who's projected as a multi-year starter now, maybe 3-year starter. You have Graham Knowles right there with him, and then Grady. So you have 3 young quarterbacks. It's hard to get someone else to come that's really good when you're looking at Aaron Philo, and then you watch Graham Knowles sling it, and they have Grady Adamson, who's a pretty good young quarterback. Some of that's going to have to sort itself out a little bit before you start getting guys that really want to come in. This ain't Alabama, and a few years ago where you're gonna. That's fine. So Will's sharing some high school gossip. That's totally possible. We are right in the midst of what would be the portal season for high school kids that now goes on as well, where guys change high schools. So,
I, I
but I
think
would say I would not be as worried about quarterback in this class. I would just say that they have a lot of really good young talent, and so
that allows Winky to be very, very picky and specific, and he already is that way as a coach. He wants
yes,
to get the right guy, and he go back and listen to his when he did his media after one of the spring practices. He talked about his recruiting process and how he evaluates, and he goes down from 100 to 50 to 10 to like he's different from a lot of the way they recruit quarterbacks. He's very picky, and he wants the guy that he feels really good about. And I think he's still probably trying to figure that out, like narrow that down in this class. You were talking
so I
about the
remember because it's funny. One of the guys he didn't love is who is the guy who signed with Ohio State that went in the portal from Georgia? Has he gone in the portal yet? Left-handed quarterback. Good God, Kelly, come on. I need to take those like brain vitamins or something. Losing my mind here. Oh, what was his name? He was like the big time hotshot quarterback recently. Played from one of the city teams.
are you talking about that's on the chat? You talking about Aaron Nolan? I think
Yes, Aaron Orland.
yeah.
So like Winky really, I got the vibe, was not a fan of Aaron Orland. Like, um, he he was like I watched him like when they're doing 7-on-7 and like you could just see he was not into him and like not impressed. And I thought he was pretty good, but I was like he has a little bit of that Cam Ward in him where he's like kind of a little too laid back. Shador a little bit like that too. Like not my favorite thing to see out of a quarterback, but they get the job done. But yeah, is Aragon in the portal? I don't remember if he did or not. I
He
feel
was
like
at,
he did, but
I think he
maybe
did.
that
He
was just a
started Ohio
rumor.
State. I saw him, which they had like their roster was completely 10 times better than Rome. That
No,
one
he's in
year.
South Carolina now, brother. He did go in the portal.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I saw he lit it up against Rome. I didn't think he was the greatest quarterback. Like they had a whole lot of players that were better than Rome at a lot of different positions in the Final Four. But I mean, he's a good quarterback. I don't think he wasn't that much
Maybe
better
he'll
than
play
some of
well
the
in South
other.
Carolina. Who knows? But
Yeah,
like, and I don't. The kid's talented. Like you can't. But there was something about him that like I think Winky just didn't dig, and it was kind of like visibly obvious to see. So that was kind of interesting. But yeah, so that kind of goes to my point. He is very picky with the quarterback recruiting. It was funny. I bumped into him and was like, "Hey, how's it going?" He was not. He was quite in an intense mood that day, so it was pretty funny to run into Winky. Winky's fun dude.
The kid from Benedictine that they offered to, he committed Texas Tech, I think, last week. So that's one that
Yeah,
yeah,
Cannon, Stephen Cannon, Carroll Cannon.
yeah.
Um, yeah, there's just like I said, man, it's hard when you have really obvious guys. Um, it can be hard to recruit. It's not like running back where you play multiple guys either, right? There's one quarterback on the field, like kicker, punter, quarterback. There's not a lot of those positions on the football field where there's one guy, so it can be hard.
There's a question about banged up guys in the spring game. What do you were they kind of real injured? Would they have been injuries that have kept them out of an in season game? I don't think so. I think it was just like
Other than the guy like Jackson Long, Brett Seither, DJ Moore, the guys coming off of serious knee injuries, that kind of stuff. Troy
colleague.
Stevenson, who was on crutches. The Eric Rivers probably not yet. I don't know that he's been fully cleared, but Malik, those guys, yeah, probably would have played in a game if it was a
Yeah,
game. Like Dean Patterson, yeah, probably. Joe, I'm not sure what was he was wearing a sleeve on his right leg, so I don't know if he just like pulled something or what happened with him. He had been out for a couple days, so um, I don't know if that. I don't feel like that's one they were like, let's hide Joe Fusel from Colorado. They weren't trying to dog it, but it made it easier for them when guys got a little dinged to just be like, all right. I forget there was it was Haas last year in the spring game. They kind of dogged it with him. Feel like he didn't play and he probably could have. And why put that on tape, man? Like, especially with the spring portal window opening.
there's a question about the size and what about both the size and performance of our interior defensive linemen?
I think
Um,
the size is fine. JJ, Vandenberg, Matthew Alexander, Landon Marshall, Shameik Jones, Jason Moore's a little undersized, but they're pretty big dudes. Uh, Matthew Alexander, you saw he actually had a sack in the spring game. That was wiped out. I think it was Christian Pritchett's interception. Um, he has really nice swim move. They talked about that, and some of the guys talked about that in the post scrimmage video or audio. If you haven't listened to that, checked it out. JJ was talking about them, his pass rush, and how it's kind of a nice compliment to him. They feel like they're a little more disruptive. Last year was they really struck gold getting Thomas Gore to add him into the mix. But if you remember, like they didn't play a horse lock at a snap last year. Jason Moore played a little bit, but it was mostly they rolled with Zeke, JJ, Machias, and Thomas Gore. And that was the four guys, and then Jason Moore rolled a little bit in. And I think in an ideal world, they'd like to find maybe one more D tackle, but I don't know that that's going to make or break games for them.
I was looking down the list here. There's a question about the defensive ends and outside linebackers. One of the guys that got talked about by several different people was Braden Manley during the spring. And after the spring game yesterday, they're talking about how he's made an impact immediately and he's a ball player.
He is country strong, as they like to say. He doesn't look impressive. Like he's physically just kind of a long, lanky guy, but he's like really effective. We watch him in practice. He gets it done. He's got it done in the scrimmages for them. He's just a good ball player. I think the feeling is that his production will be better than what they've had at that position in recent memory. And then you have a Montre Bradford who had a good spring behind him. And then guys like Dre Fuller or, Jordan Boyd or whoever you want to put in that third spot. Fuller's been playing some flex end. The other spot with Triplet will be interesting. Triplets again, sort of like Manley too. Like he is not like a big giant dude or anything, but he just gets blue collar. I remember they thought he might just be a depth guy, and then the sort of X factor in all this would be like an AJ Hoffler who got hurt early in camp and hasn't been out for has been out for a while, so you really aren't sure where he's at. Christian or some a young buck like Christian Garrett, can he get in and get a little bit of burn too at the bigger defensive end spot? They'd like to have a bunch of guys like Christian Garrett size. That's the idea. The goal would be to play with most of the time a bigger defensive end that is almost like another D tackle, and then have a rush guy, and then on passing downs maybe you have two rush guys on and pull that bigger defensive end off, or he slides inside. That's what they did at Duke. That's what Jess likes, but they're not there quite yet with the personnel. And I would not be shocked if that's eventually how it evolves as they're able to keep recruiting and building this up.
I was looking at the box score from yesterday. The guys that actually got recorded sacks were Andre Fuller Jr., Jason Moore, and Matthew Alexander. And then Miles Forrestal had a tackle for loss. So, I mean,
number 34, baby.
That's right. He got some good run there yesterday.
They ran a lot of those guys. They were, like Melvin Jordan. They weren't going to show you a lot of Melvin Jordan, or like Isaac Eford was out. He was another one of the ones that wouldn't have played if it was a game. Coming off his shoulder, Rodney Shelley would be the other one on the defensive side.
Here's a question. I don't know if either one of us have any clue. There was something on 680 The Fan about rumors of new uniforms. Do you have any insight on that? As long as they don't use Navy, the board don't want any Navy, no Navy uniforms.
There's still like got a year left, I think, on the Adidas thing. I forget. We were talking about this yesterday, and I totally have spaced on it. That's like one of those like May topics, like what's going on with the summertime with the apparel deals and stuff. But yeah, it wouldn't shock me if there's new uniforms. I feel like the whites were like Jeff Collins era white jerseys that they dug out of somewhere in Punt's equipment room. So I don't know. They were a little bit hard to read, which I don't enjoy. I'd forgot my binoculars, so that didn't help.
The white with gold numbers is a little tough sometimes on sunny days.
Not West Durham's favorite jersey combo, that's for sure. The one that he really hated was when they wore the white or the gold with the it was like checkered numbers, like with like a little like spaces in them or something, like to fill out the number.
Yeah,
it wasn't solid numbers, and it was almost impossible to read. Those might have been honeycombs that were like that.
Yeah, and, those were something.
It was so hard to read the numbers. It was just like, oh my God. I was like looking at people's like body shapes and stuff to figure out who some of the guys were. Yeah, it might have been 2012 honeycomb. Will said in the chat. That might have been
I just want them to actually wear the gold jerseys like at least once this year, since they didn't wear them at all last year. It was pretty crazy, but maybe that'll come sometime. Let's see. We talked about the slamming players.
I think I got a picture of this. Hold on. So these were the. Oh, no, that's the thing. Let me see if I can find it. Because now I'm all interested in this because we brought it up. If I can find these terrible jerseys. Give me a second.
I mean, Russell Athletic had a few that were not great. I remember those. I think
there were some rough times.
I think my brother got one that was.
So this is the gold version. I'll show you the gold version of this, but like not the. Oh wait, no, I don't want to. Hold on. I'll try to show you. I think this might be like Ricky June. This picture. Why are you trying to?
Ricky June was brought up by the chat a little while ago. Ricky June, we were talking about receivers. Ricky June, Stephen Hill.
Oh no, this isn't Ricky June. Who is this picture of? That's a good trivia question for people. Hold on. Here you go. This was the gold version of this jersey with what I was talking about, the checkering letters. This is from what game is this? Who are they playing in this game? Someone with red jerseys. What the hell game is this? Sorry.
It looks like
I think it's Boston College. So this would have been. So is that Jeff Green maybe?
81.
But yeah, it was Boston College.
I don't know about those
I
helmets.
think it's Boston. I don't know. Let's see. They've come a long way. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
From
yeah. Like that's a lot of different golds there. With the, I know people complain still about the golds not matching up and stuff, but that's a whole different level of not matching up the golds, right there. That's a whole different palette of gold.
yeah. So this is from a win over Boston College, October 20th, 2012. Huh. Okay. Sorry, I've really digressed here, people, but it gets. This is what happens to be like. I try to go to sleep at night, and you guys are always like, "Why are you up so late?" So I get sucked into like the rabbit hole of some ridiculous freaking like thinking about like something like this, and then I'm like up for like an hour, like r- like going back through this in my mind, like look at these terrible jerseys they once wore at in football games. Yeah, this is pretty terrible. But yeah, I have like a database of all this stuff, like old picture. I should probably do some of this stuff in the summertime. Put this up for you guys.
You could do a
There's
name that player like an old.
there's Jamia.
Oh man, I watched him play. He Fitzgerald, right? I believe
Yeah,
he they came up to Pepperell several years ago in the playoffs and beat the absolute stuffing out of them. And I think it was like a Elite Eight game. He was, I think he played quarterback.
and there's Tony Zahn. So yeah, those were bad jerseys. Bad.
That's some big shoulder
2012 is not a
pads
good
right
year.
there. That's a big shoulder pad running back right there. Let's see. There's some other questions
Here you
about.
go. That's TJ Barnes. And the and look at what's going on here. You got white, navy, and this is just a hot mess. Sorry, guys.
T.J. Barnes. I think he might have been a Cartersville kid if I remember correctly.
That sounds about right. Anyways, sorry, guys.
There's some other questions on here about Damon being blindsided by the departures. I think we kind of
I don't
talked
know
about
if he's
that.
blindsided. Disappointed would be more
Yeah,
the way I'd put it. But if some school's going to offer Duncan Powell, let's call it $500,000, whatever the number was. Like, is that guy worth that in this? No. Like, and I like Duncan. But no, and I don't blame that kid for 2 seconds for going to get that. That's the most money he's probably ever going to make in his life in a year or less than a year of work.
he's tight with Waka Flocka though, so I think he probably runs in that crowd. We talked about that after one of the basketball games this year. But yeah,
Oh, Sed's bringing up the player model that they used, yes, for the honeycombs. Oh my God, those were terrible things. It's a lot of bad memories. That's
yeah.
when I remember one person trying to tell me that Georgia Tech's facilities weren't bad at that time too. I was like, They've made quite a bit of progress in like the last 5 years and or whatever, and even since like the end of Paul's run in terms of facilities, what they're doing with like uniforms, all of that stuff. It is leaps and bounds ahead of that. Someone asked about portal basketball. There's nothing breaking. These are all essentially negotiations, like free agency. That's how you have to look at this. So guys are weighing the opportunities, money, and all these other things. So there's no. And essentially, what happens and what's going on at Georgia Tech is they're trying to keep as much under wraps as they can, so they don't end up in some sort of bidding war. Everyone now sees that Damon's good at finding kind of diamonds in the rough, so that's a problem because guys they start to recruit get other schools to jump in on them. There's a lot of nonsense going on with all this, so they're trying to keep things under wraps till they have like somebody wrapped up and done. So they've been quiet about visits. Like the couple of visits that have leaked out have been mostly from the side of the player.
I mean,
So no, it's been weird.
Wilkinson visited before he committed to Georgia. We know that one.
They had a kid from Oral Roberts who averaged like 3 points a game. That was like sort of a 10th, 12th man guy. Like they've had a lot of different random dudes in, but it's not been nothing of like great consequence that they want out there at least. And it's been a little dry, like trying to get info in terms of that too. Just they just don't want it out there. It's not like so like Carolina has a lot of money, so they're not as tight-lipped with their guys sharing it.
Carolina's
So he asked about Kate Harpering, which is one of my favorite subjects. If you really wanted Kate Harpering, you should have just like hired maybe her high school coach or something. I don't know. I don't know if the new coach is on the Kate Harpering recruiting trail or not, or how any of that works. But
I think she's a bit busy right now trying to fill out a staff and get more
have a
than
team that has more than
three
like three
players on the
players.
roster. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Appreciate you, Nico, for your questions, though. Thanks.
But you never know. Harpering, pretty big name around Georgia Tech. So
Yeah, maybe if Luke starts doing well, that'll stir it up.
there's another question about the OL play on Saturday. I think we kind of talked about that. I don't know. That's the kind of question mark for me. The biggest coming out of spring is how the offensive line is going to end up going into fall camp. Is I feel good about most of the positions and kind of the roster being deeper, and I'm just a little bit of question mark about the offensive line. That's the one thing and taken away from spring for me.
I think it's more of just that right tackle spot. I think they're fine everywhere else. I think the right tackle, they got to figure that out. What if it's Riggs or whoever, Galloway, or if they need to go get somebody or whatever. That's to me is the thing because I feel good about McKinney now he's healthy at left tackle. Then you have Fusel at guard, Harrison Moore or Tana playing center, right guard you got Big Red. So I think you're in pretty good position. It's just that maybe that right tackle spot.
I think we reached the bottom of the questions. There's a question about like a broader question of how do you feel about the future of the football program? That's kind of, I
I
mean, I
think
think
Brent would practically sell, his own blood to win football games. So like, I feel pretty good that they're going to figure out a way to win.
I think that this is a big year. I'll just say that because seven wins last 2 years, a little bit seems like more manageable schedule this year. This is the year to take that next step up, and there's expectations now on the team a little bit. So see how they respond, and then we can talk about a little more long term future of the program, where it's going, and that kind of stuff.
Nico had a question. I have not met the new women's basketball coach yet, but Alex did.
I have. I like her. I think she's a very good recruiter, which is the main thing you want to have. And she's waited a long time for the right opportunity. She's been an assistant coach for like 20 years, so she's not just taking any job to take a job. She's very peculiar about the job she took, and she made it clear that Georgia Tech was the one that made her want to make the jump to being a head coach. So, I think she's a good one. Maryland's won pretty big with her on staff with Brenda Freeze. So if she can recruit Atlanta, she'll be in good shape.
So we'll end with this. There's questions about like oxygen and Boulder and stuff. We can get into that like in the summertime. Nico asked about 2026 being a real tough schedule. So here's what I tell you. Everybody in the world talked about Florida State before the beginning of the season, right? Like how great Florida State is. Florida State's this, Florida State's that. You have no idea, like tomorrow, what a team's going to look like after the portal opens in a week or whatever, right? Like, we don't even know what these teams look like. We don't know who the head coaches are going to be. We don't know who goes to the NFL, like who leaves, who gets fired. Like Mario Cristobal could have any of those outcomes between now and 2026, right? At Miami, or Dabo Sweeney gets pushed out at Clemson, or just gives up, or because he hates this, or like there's a lot of this going on. So I think that or Josh Heupel, what's going on at Tennessee, or like Notre Dame, does Marcus Freeman in the NFL? Is Marcus Freeman, got it still cruising there? I think it's way too early to worry about that. You worry about that next year. You worry about what's going on, but it is a difficult schedule having right now at Tennessee, at Notre Dame, Georgia here. and Arkansas State is your schedule, and then I think Miami and Florida State maybe on the ACC slate. So
I think 26 is Georgia.
was that 27? I'm
26
sorry,
is
I'm talking about
Tennessee here.
27.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 26 Tennessee's here.
Colorado's here.
Colorado's here. That game will get moved to the Benz now, which is the other thing I kept trying to tell everybody was the outcome of dumping the Georgia State game was now you've gained another home game out of this in Bobby Dodd Stadium because the Colorado game will be there. Tennessee game will probably be in the Benz. They haven't announced that, but that's my gut feeling on that. One of those two games was going to the Benz, so it was going to be Colorado, but now I don't think it'll be Tennessee week 2 or week 3, whatever that is. Mercer at Clemson. You don't know what that is. Louisville is pretty good. But I mean, if you look at that schedule, you got Tennessee here, Colorado here, at Georgia and Athens, where you've played them better historically for the last 25 years or whatever it's been. Clemson's been a house of horrors for Tech at Clemson, really, for a long, other than that one weird game with Jeff Collins. You get BC here, you get Duke here, you get Louisville here, you get Wake here. Those are all winnable games. At Pitt, winnable game. At Stanford, winnable game. At Virginia Tech, winnable game. That is not some gauntlet. It just sucks that you have to play Tennessee and Colorado and Georgia in the same season. And Mercer is your one gimme. But
I don't like this past year
and I
when
get what he's saying. He's saying it's about trajectory. And I say
right.
yes, but momentum's what is the baseball adage? Momentum's as good as tomorrow the next day's starting pitcher or whatever that like we have no idea who's on the football team come 6 months from now, right? Like I walked around that first day of spring practice and like there were like 34 new guys, I think is what Brent said. Like literally people I'd never met in my life. Like having covered the program forever, that was kind of a first for me. Like other than some of the freshmen like Josh Petty or Garrett or like those guys who I knew, I had never met Eric Rivers or Dean Patterson or Malachi Holsley or like.
That's why they put those names on the helmets. They
Yeah,
were that was
literally
helpful.
was like Brown was like, I don't know, because they changed numbers and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
but that's the constant now, and it is in college football. And that's part of the continuity issue you have, and why they have to figure out some things. Because like, if you're at, that's why Dave Clawson retired at Wake. Like, if you're at Wake, they were turning into a feeder program for like Michigan State, Notre Dame, and all these schools. Like, that ain't a good thing if you're a power and that's happening in the SEC too, brother. Like, don't delude yourself that that's not happening with SEC or Big Ten programs too. There's quite a few of them getting picked off too. So like it as I told the one Georgia State fan who was giving me grief, like things roll downhill. Nebraska screwed Tennessee, so Georgia State got screwed over by Georgia Tech, and Georgia State will screw someone else over to fill that slot. That's just how it works. And thankfully, yes, as Nico said, Georgia Tech ain't a feeder yet. They've done more feeding than they've been more of a what's the word I'm looking for, Alex? More of a fisherman than the
That's
fish.
right. They've received the feeding.
Yeah, they've been enjoying the feast and not been getting. I don't know. Sorry, my brain's fried.
I'll say this about the schedule thing. Number one is I don't really care about 2026 right now, for one thing. But two is at the end of this past season, there was all this talk about SMU getting in the playoff. They didn't play anybody. Well, you're not going to have that, excuse anymore. If the ACC's down and Georgia Tech's got that kind of out of conference schedule, you can't use that excuse anymore. I think you're going to get rewarded for scheduling opponents like that. Even if you lose, you can say you've played good teams. So you got to be in the top 12. That's the goal. So scheduling good teams and strength of schedule is going to go a long way in that.
Appreciate everyone for joining us tonight, and it's been a fun one, and we'll be back soon. Probably won't be quite as long a layoff between now and the next one. Maybe when the portal closes, we'll do a little something to kind of catch up on where things are at. If there's something more breaking, maybe we'll jump in and do something in the meantime. Hopefully it's a quiet portal season for Georgia Tech over the next 2 weeks. Let's knock on wood here.
And I want to see a lot of y'all at the Truist Park on Tuesday. I'll just say that. I don't want I want there to be a balanced a gold and red.
You want to hear people yelling "to hell with Georgia" like Jamal Haynes did as he left the press conference on Saturday.
That's right. We need to make the short drive to Truist Park and support this team and hopefully get a big win.
Appreciate everybody. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back sooner than later. Thanks.